Hello, hello, and welcome to Decaf, a production of the Beacon Center of Tennessee. I am Taylor here in rainy, stormy, hail was just falling on my house, Nashville, while Mark is joining us from Seaside, right outside Seaside in Blue Mountain Beach, Florida on Highway 30A. I was just down there less than a month ago. It's so beautiful this time of the year. Mark, how you feeling? Are you just chilling and having a great day in paradise?
Yeah, not such a great day today. Work, a lot of work
Work
happening.
today.
a lot of kind of crisis mode at work for a new report. But I think we got to figure it out now. So it's nice, we're very lucky we get to work remotely, and I can be able to do this for a couple of weeks, and I get to work outside in the screened-in porch while it's 65 degrees out. It's kind of perfect. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be talking with you about our topics this week.
Yeah, I stood up while you've been working out on your screen porch. I stood up from my chair twice this morning, once to use the restroom, and the next time to use the restroom and get a handful of shredded cheese because that's all I had time to do. So I am thankful that all of that is behind us and that we get to come and talk on Decaf because Decaf really is the highlight of our week. We couldn't leave our fans, our listeners in the lurch. So we're just glad to be here.
Yeah, it's funny. Look at my phone. I think I have, about 30 calls between you, Ron, and Stephanie the last 5 hours trying to. So while you've been sitting down, I've been just pacing around on the phone trying to figure out some technical issues we've had with an upcoming report.
People have different responses, fight, flight, or freeze. I'm a freeze, and I was frozen to my chair until I needed a handful of shredded cheese. And ladies and gentlemen, the reason we exercise is so that we can eat shredded cheese by the handful. And I will stand by that until the day that I die. Speaking of the report, now that our technical issues are resolved and we have it out, let's talk about our much anticipated report about healthcare in Tennessee. So we talked about this a few times, certificate of need. You might not be familiar with it, so I'll give you a crash course real quick. A certificate of need is basically like a permission slip from the government to open a healthcare facility, a hospital, a standalone emergency room, various things like that. Healthcare facilities also in the past have needed certificates of need to add more beds to a hospital to increase their capacity. It really is, in my opinion, a racket because certificate of need laws it was a federal law up until the 1980s, and the federal government said, wait a second, we don't need these anymore. And so they abolished them from the federal level, but there are still a few holdout states that keep certificate of need in play. And it limits access to healthcare for so many people who live in rural areas and a certificate of need is denied and they then have to drive to a larger metropolitan area to get access to care. It limits how many patients, hospitals, standalone ERs, whatever can deal with. We told a story once of Michelle Gross. If you don't remember Michelle and her daughter Asher, who had very significant medical needs, they needed at-home health services and they couldn't access those because of a certificate of need in their area. And so these laws really do hinder healthcare more than I think a lot of other things that people kind of freak out about. And so we released a report today about certificate of need denials in Tennessee. Did a lot of research, a lot of data collection about where certificates of need were denied in various counties across the state, how many certificate of need applications there have been in recent years. And it really highlights the simple fact, which is this: certificate of need is 1, unnecessary, 2, cumbersome, and 3, restrictive. That's how I always describe certificate of need to my friends who do not work in policy and do not know what I'm talking about. Mark, what were some of your main takeaways from this research that we released today?
Well, I actually think in some ways that you're almost giving certificate of need not as bad of a name as it should have, because look, all those things that you said are true, but the real fact of it is it costs people's lives. It literally is responsible for deaths. There's a Mercatus study that said that reductions in mortalities in heart attacks, heart failures, and pneumonia were when you got rid of certificate of need laws that actually reduced that. So outside of all those other things, which are all true, everything's true, you might have to go an extra 20 minutes to the yard. That could be problematic, but it literally costs people their lives. So having these CO, and it's not an exaggeration, and it's not some kind of talking point. It's true. And I don't know the exact number, and it might not be a ton, but certificate of need has been responsible for people dying. And that's strong. And because the government is involved in, and it's not just the government. That's one other thing. It is unelected bureaucrats. It's not somebody you elect that you can say, oh, I'm not happy. These are unelected bureaucrats. And the fact is, outside of Iraq, it is, this is basically costing Tennesseans their lives. And
It
I'm not
is.
okay with that because it's more government interaction that needs to be. And it's saying, you know what? You want to open a hospital? Great. You want an ER? Great. That's perfect because, somebody is going to save 20 minutes. That's going to an ER, which can be the difference between life and death. That's
especially when you're having a heart attack, when someone with respiratory issues is having an asthma attack. 20 minutes is life or death. When a high risk mother is in labor, 20 minutes can be the difference. 10 minutes can be the difference in life and death in those situations. And when I say racket, this is kind of what I'm talking about. So when a medical organization that wants to open a new facility has to go before the CON board, the CON board is a board of their competitors. So Ron put it this way in a blog post a couple years ago that made a lot of sense to me. Imagine a Chick-fil-A wants to open in your neighborhood, and there are 4 corners on this street that they can open on. On one corner, there's a Popeyes. On one corner, there's a McDonald's. And on one corner, there's a Zaxby's. And Chick-fil-A wants to open on the 4th corner. Chick-fil-A would have to go before a board of Popeyes, McDonald's, and Zaxby's, and they could say, we don't need any more fried chicken in this area. That's the equivalent of what a certificate of need does with much higher stakes. These medical facilities have to go before a board of their peers and competitors to prove the need in their area. I don't know about you, but if someone came to me and said, I'd like to build a cancer center here because the next closest one is 40 minutes away, and I don't want unhealthy high-risk cancer patients to have to drive 40 minutes every single day to get their radiation or once a week to get chemo or whatever, I would say, do you want my house? Do you want to build it in my house? Like I would do anything to get a cancer center like that, a standalone ER, things like that. So, it really is, certificate of need really is a racket. I would encourage everyone to go to our website, beacontn.org. Our certificate of need paper will be up on our research page. You should definitely check that out and just read about this very unknown. It's shocking to me how unknown this law is because I won't mention any names, but in Alabama, when I was a little girl, a hospital executive went to prison for a very long time for bribery on their certificate of need board. And so it shocks me that people don't really know what certificate of need is because it is one of the biggest rackets that we have to deal with in the states that are holdouts.
And in some ways, it can kind of already be legalized bribery. Like, right? It's a legal thing, and it can be legalized bribery. And it's like, you don't need to, it's really tough to say that people don't deserve healthcare, options in their neighborhood because the government says no. Not because there's not a need for it, not because there's not a market for it, there is. But
there's never not a need for healthcare options. I'm sorry, there's not.
And there's people, and again, they're saying that they can make money, and this is a good investment for them. And their competitors who are making money saying, oh, no, it's not. But like, we're talking about people's lives. And it's almost it's not a monopoly exactly, but it's kind of like a monopoly. You need government permission to do that. So I do also want to bring one other point up, which I think was interesting, that Ron kind of looked it up, and he said that most denials are in a location that basically is considered underserved medically or it disproportionately affects underserved groups. Populations. So the very people who need it the most are the ones where the denials are happening the most. It's not like a lot of denials are happening in the city of Nashville. There's a million choices. You're talking about small counties. There's a lot of denials in Cleveland, that area, Cleveland. And it's just, you see these numbers and you're like, why is this happening? And it's problematic, and the government should not be involved in that. If a hospital, or if an ER thing or whatever they want to do and doesn't make enough money, maybe it'll close them. But they're saying there's a market for it, and it should not be up to unelected bureaucrats who have they don't answer to anybody, and they can just choose what they want to do, and that's not fair.
Or people who already have a stake in the game.
Yeah, competitors or unelected bureaucrats. Yeah, best case scenario is unelected bureaucrats.
Seriously. So it's a CON is a huge racket, and it's costing Tennesseans lives. So if you care about those things, go check out our report and tell us what you think about it. We would love to hear if you've had an experience having to drive really far to get to a medical facility because something was denied in your area, or if you don't know if it was denied in your area and you want us to find out. Honey, we got the data. We got a good map. You can see exactly every county, how many, or actually every area, how many CON, not closures, but where the CON denials there were. Yeah. So it's cool to see, really good interactive map. So we will, you'll see that tomorrow. It's our first little venture in data visualization. So everybody check that out and see what you think about that and let us know. Mark, we're going to throw it back for our next topic to November. Think about November when we were up until the very middle of the night on our election show. And we started seeing results come in of Republicans losing after former President Trump said, if they win, credit me. If they lose, don't credit me. I looked it up on YouTube because I thought you were lying.
No, you said that.
So I looked it up on
don't
YouTube, and I just want to ask you this simple question. Do you think that President Trump's influence in the GOP is waning? And if why or why not?
So this really comes on the heels too of what we saw with the speaker fight over Kevin McCarthy, where there was 20 holdouts for a while. Eventually, Speaker McCarthy got the votes. But one of the interesting tidbits was the holdouts were for the most part, to the right, pretty conservative. I think they'd say more conservative than the average legislators. And President Trump pled with them to say, hey, support Kevin McCarthy. And these are people who are, they all love Trump. These are kind of his people. And they didn't budge.
Matt Gaetz nominated Trump like a bunch of times.
After Trump said to vote for McCarthy, Matt Gaetz voted for Trump. So these are the people who are these are the people who are the most loyal to him for the most part. And when he told them to do that, they didn't budge. They voted, probably 6, 7, 8 more times against Kevin McCarthy after that. So it makes you think and I'm not talking about the actual voters. I think that's a separate this thing that I don't know. But the question is, what kind of pull does President Trump still have on the Republicans in Congress? Right. It's clearly not zero. I mean, it's clearly
not zero. All right.
But fair. It's interesting to look at when we see what happened in the last election, which you can blame whoever you want. There's a lot of, it depends on who you do. But if you're a Republican, a lot of people are blaming, a lot of the Republicans say, oh, it's because of President Trump or because President Trump, whatever. And a lot of people are saying, no, it's not because of that. But either way, it's clear that he might not, that President Trump probably doesn't have the pull with voters that he may have had at one time.